Hello everybody, and welcome to Gaming in the Wild, a video games podcast about games from the creative artistic side of the tracks, from indie to AAA. My name's John, I'm your host, and I'm recording late. It's about 11 PM, midweek. It's dark and cold. The temperatures are really dropping here in Reykjavik now. I noticed just now, I popped out to see if there were any aurora tonight. There weren't, but I could see north of where I am a beam of light shooting straight up into the sky. It's an artwork here called the Peace Tower by Yoko Ono, and it's lit at this time every year, so it's a nice sight to see, although it does mean that winter is coming. But it's a really cool artwork, just a beam of light going up into the sky. And it does mean that winter is fast approaching. I noticed some snow on the mountaintops opposite the city. There'll be a process of watching that snow inch its way down the mountains until it finally hits ground level. And the long winter will have begun. But as always, it is the perfect season for playing games, and I have been playing loads. Last week I said that I was looking for a new main game, and that has continued to be the case actually. But I did find one. I found a wonderful little indie game that I'm going to talk about today called Haiku the Robot. I actually bought this game by accident. I saw it on sale, and I looked at some screenshots and saw a little robot jumping over some crackling yellow electricity and pixel art. And I thought, I've seen that game, that's ringing a bell for me. But I realised upon playing the game that it's not what I thought I was getting. I thought I was buying the game Elekhead, I realised later, which is a puzzle game, which I do really want to play. But I'd accidentally bought Haiku the Robot and realised fairly quickly that it's a Metroidvania. And I just was absolutely swept up in it. I played it for several hours a night this week. Took me 3 days to get through it. It's quite a short game. But I had a great time with it, so for a short while there, I had found my main game. But it was such a short one that I'm done with it already. But that does mean that I have been playing some other stuff in the meantime as well. I have a few new ones that I've added to the slate for the podcast, got a couple of codes in for new games. So I'm adding to the review list Paradise Marsh. This is a game about exploring in nature, about dealing with wildlife, about cataloguing wildlife and discovering different plants and that sort of thing. And I love those kind of games. I loved Alba, the wildlife adventure game that's on Apple Arcade. That was a really good time. And I've been fascinated with games where you catalogue nature, actually, as far back as Metroid Prime. It was probably my favourite thing about that game. So I'm looking forward to trying out Paradise Marsh. I also got a code for I Was a Teenage Exocolonist. It's a narrative sci-fi role-playing game. It looks a bit visual novelish. It's narrative-heavy, story-driven, and you play a teenage exocolonist. You have social standing, you have school, you have dating, and you have a story. It's published by Finji, who put out Chicory last year, which was one of my games of the year, and they put out Tunic this year. They also put out Night in the Woods, so I'm always curious to see what Finji are putting out, so I'm looking forward to that one. And finally, I got a code for Lego Bricktales. I've been hearing some really good things about it, and earlier this year I played a little bit of the Skywalker Saga as a comfort food game on like a bleak Sunday, and I actually had a really good time with it. It made me smile. It was quite a joyful, silly, simple game, so I'm going to dig into Lego Bricktales as well. I did start one new game as well, just randomly, a game called Scourgebringer. You may have seen this one. It's got like a neon colour palette, pixel art. I got it on Games with Gold, and it was just sitting in my Xbox library for a while. But I opened it on a whim, and I actually played quite a lot of it last weekend. It's a very fast action, pixel art, sci-fi roguelike, where you just have to clear a screen, move on to the next screen with different enemy types. Very, very nippy, zippy movement. You have a dash that lets you basically hover in midair. The dash is an attack, and if you hit something by dashing into it, it recharges your dash, which allows you to kind of hover around the screen like a firefly and just follow enemies around. It's really satisfying. You just clear screens very quickly. It's a bit Celeste-like in movement with a wall grab, and with that long dash, lots of power-ups. You get to build up your powers across runs. It's also got a bit of a Hyperlight Drifter influence in the combat, I would say. So it's Celeste meets Hyperlight Drifter in a roguelike format. I had a really good time with that one. I unlocked the entire skill tree. I rinsed it for a few hours a day in the last weekend. Hit a wall towards the end of the game and lost my motivation a little because, that constant roguelike problem of having to play the first few levels. But I had a really good time with it. I'm going to see if I can power through and finish it. I'm taking a little break right now. And if I do, I think I will review that one later. There are a few games that I'm still playing as well. I'm still playing Rogue Legacy 2. That's a roguelike that does not succumb to those traditional problems. It's just going from strength to strength, really. I'm so very impressed with the mechanics that they've put in place in that game to allow it to just continue to open up and continue to develop even after, I think I have 20 hours in it now. I'm over halfway through it. And I'm just loving that game. I'm really planning to finish that one by the end of the year and get a review in, a feature review on this podcast. I'm still playing a little bit of Four Tales, the narrative card game, where you use your cards for combat, but also to make decisions and to open up new story paths. And I've been playing some more Rollerdrome, that roller skating action game where you have to land tricks in the skate game style whilst shooting enemies that are firing missiles at you, snipers that are trying to target you. So you have to keep moving. You have to trick to reload. I loved the opening section of it, but it got very hard very quickly. So I've been taking a break from that one too. I've been running into some really hard games lately where they're just a little bit above what I feel comfortable with. But Rollerdrome does have some assist mode settings, and I've been fiddling with them to try and find something that balances out a level of challenge to keep it interesting, but also just notches down the difficulty a little bit. And I think I might have found the Goldilocks zone for me to play Rollerdrome. So hopefully I'll be talking about that one in the future too. So lots on the slate. I feel like I have loads of good games in the bag at the moment to just play across the next few weeks and keep the podcasts coming. I also plan to finish Final Fantasy VII this year. It's getting to that time of the year where I want to finish off a couple of big games that I'm midway through, polish off a lot of indies that are on my to playlist, and start looking towards Game of the Year time. I've got like a running list now that has 15 games on it that I'm juggling now and then just to try and pull my list into shape. But it's been a strong year, I think. I played some really good games this year, and I always look forward to the GOTY podcast month of December, and we're getting there fast. But before we dive into Haiku the Robot, let me just say, this is a patron-supported show, so I'd like to say a big thank you to the latest patron who's just joined up, B Sushi. Thank you very much to B Sushi for signing up for the Patreon and joining the Discord. Nice to have a fresh face in there. The Discord has been buzzing lately. We have loads of conversations going on about No Man's Sky. Everyone has been comparing high scores in Dorfromantik, which has been a bit of a hit. There's a bunch of people playing Hard Space Shipbreaker. We have channels for those games. And everyone's been sharing some Halloween game suggestions for this month. It's a really fun little community. You can join us. Go to patreon.com/gaminginthewild, and you can sign up for $1 a month or more if you would like. You'll get a Discord invite, and you'll get loads of bonus episodes that I've made across the last few years as well. So thank you very much to all my existing patrons. Thanks to B Sushi for joining up. And you are welcome to join us at patreon.com/gaminginthewilds. And with that said, let's move on and talk about the featured game of this episode, Haiku the Robot. So Haiku the Robot, it's a funny one. I bought this one by accident. When does that ever happen? I think it's happened to me once before ever, a case of mistaken identity. But it turned out to be such a wonderful game, and I'm so happy that I stumbled across it. This game came out this year. It's available on Windows, Mac and Switch. I played it on the Switch. It is a perfect handheld game. It runs flawlessly. It's clean and bug-free. Not a single glitch throughout my playtime. And it loads like lightning, and it's a rarity on the Switch. Anyone that uses the Switch will know that sometimes load times can really slow things down, but this one loaded like it was running on like a modern day console from SSD. Quite incredible, really. It's a pixel art Metroidvania, and it's an indie game in the truest sense of the phrase. It was made by one person. It was made by Master Morris Games, that is the solo developer, Jordan Morris. As far as I know, it's Jordan's only commercially released game. And it was a Kickstarter, and according to the Kickstarter page, he made this game seemingly pretty much single-handedly, whilst holding down a day job at the same time, which is quite an achievement for a fully-fledged, fully released, fully realised game. The only other person that I could find listed as a credit was the composer Guy Jones, who presumably made this music that we're listening to now. It's got a wonderful soundtrack. And the Kickstarter was pretty humble, comparatively. They were aiming for 22 grand in pounds, and it was actually kickstarted all the way up to 30, which is why it's on the Switch now. So that Kickstarter enabled the Switch release. This one has had very little media coverage. It's been very quiet. There aren't many reviews out there, which is something of a tragedy, I think, considering how good it is. There aren't enough reviews on Metacritic for it to have a Metascore. There are only 4 reviews, but 2 of them are 90s, so people who have been playing it have been loving it. And how long to beat has this one? At 7 to 9 hours. I feel like I played more than that. I feel like I did at least 3 sessions of about 4 hours each, but I think I took my time with this one, really. I spent a lot of time wandering, and that's kind of built into the game, I think. And too much unguided wandering can sometimes be something that will annoy me about a game, but something about this game left me very happy to do so. So I spent a lot of time revisiting areas that I'd been to already in a really chill way, just enjoying, exploring, looking for little nooks and crannies that I'd missed and secrets, and often finding some. It's a concise game, but there is a lot to do in this one. So I don't actually know what my playtime is. The game clock says 27 hours, but I think that is the entire time since I opened it on my Switch. The clock has just been running, I think. And my Switch is still saying first played 2 days ago and won't tell me how long I've played it for. But I'm going to guess about 12 to 15 hours, something like that. And the developers describe it like this. Delve into the depths of a mechanical world in this cute adventure exploration game. Explore and fight in a land full of corrupt robots and machinery, all while seeking the answers to the mysteries around you. And my take on this one is that it's a charming pixel art sci-fi Metroidvania that wears its influences on its sleeve but isn't overawed by them. Haiku the Robot is a lovingly crafted adventure through a dysfunctional robot society. It's sailing under the radar, but this is a game that absolutely deserves your attention. So this game begins when Haiku, the robot of the title, is just a cute little round blob, and he pops out of a storage pod in just a little cupboard and wakes up. And a little apparition appears and welcomes you into the world and wonders who you are. And you run through a couple of tubes, you learn how to swing your sword to knock a few things out of the way, and then you fall down this giant garbage chute. It's like a huge metal tube, and in the background you can see all of this junk collapsing down, and you land on a junk pile, and you've arrived in this strange world that you're going to be exploring. It's a Warren-like underground world where a robot civilization has crumbled, and you're going to be walking through the wreckage of it. The civilization has been corrupted and has fallen apart. And you really do feel like an adventurer or an archaeologist or something like that. And as you explore, you start to piece together what happened to this world called Arcadia, and you start to get some ideas of what you can maybe do to fix it. And exploration is the real star of the show in this game. It's a game that thrives on just really cutting the player loose, which is a brave choice. It's trusting the player to stay interested. It's trusting the player to follow their curiosity. And there is definitely like a risk associated with removing any kind of linearity in a game like this. But this game handles it so well. The focus of the whole game is this open-ended exploration through a really beautiful world with a great soundscape and lovely look to it. And the biomes are really interesting. The first one is this tire trash heap, where all the trash has been falling down from whatever is above. And you'll find your way through some water ducts that are dripping and cracked, and through old bunkers that have been long abandoned, and factories that are semi-working or not working at all. And there's a real sense of discovery to all of this. There's a load of biomes that I won't spoil here that open up as you move through the story. And I think that this is the kind of game that everyone will have a different route through. You're not tied to go in any particular direction. And I loved that. I loved the sense of agency and freedom that I felt right from the beginning of the game. And it's different to the feeling that you get in like a vast 3D open world, which can be a little overwhelming. There's just stuff in every direction. You know, like the Assassin's Creed Valhalla feeling that I've been having, where I'm loving playing the game. But it's just a lot, you know. This is a much more contained game. It's a smaller world, but it still does feel open. And there are open caverns, installations, claustrophobic passageways, all of these metal vaults and just the ruins of things. And every time that you come into a new room and you pick up a little detail and start to piece together what happened in this world or what kind of world it was just through the visual storytelling that you're getting through exploring. It's a really nice feeling. There are lots of hidden places to find. And there's lots to keep you amused along the way. You'll find chips and power-ups. You'll find little strange pillars that you can smash to pick up currency. There's lots of little leading platforms that you can't quite reach yet, but you know you will be able to one day. So it's got that classic Metroidvania feel. If people like that genre, this is a great example of it. It really is. And I have to say, I really enjoyed the feeling that came with this game. There was a feeling of this large, empty world, of this hollow, city-like structure under the ground that was just full of mystery. There was lots of space, lots of expansiveness. Everything was dripping and rusting, and the atmosphere just sucked me in right from the off. And the really nice atmosphere and mood of this game is helped by the presentation. It's all pixel art. It's pretty basic pixel art, but very well done. It does a lot with a little. It feels genuinely retro, but just really, really nicely created. It only uses a few colors. It's largely desaturated. It's often a little murky. There's lots of browns and grays and rust colors. And very little alive down here, but it's all designed to give you that feeling. It all works really well together. I really like all the animations. I love the crunchy pixel animations. I love the pipes just spewing out water in the background. Always some nice details in the background that make it look deep, even though it's like a strictly 2D game. You could always see like trash coming out of chutes. You could see flickering circuit boards and hear sounds in the distance. All of the sound is wonderful. Like on this track we're listening to now, you can hear this drumming of dripping water falling onto metal. Really nice atmosphere. There's loads of running water sounds, clanking, crumpled up metal sounds, and echoing through huge spaces, lots of humming and thrumming machinery, just ambient sounds of big space, crackling power where there is power, that sort of thing. And the music is really minimal, but really, really moody and atmospheric. Lots of wavy synths, lots of nice bit crushed effects and beeps and bops. When you pick stuff up, it makes a cute little video gamey noise. Everything sounds like it's playing through like a slightly broken speaker. It just sounds old and broken and lost and wonderful, really. It really fits the mood of exploring somewhere this deep and this desolate. And if this sounds a little familiar, it felt familiar too. Arcadia is like an automated Hollow Nest. If you've played Hollow Knight, you'll remember the Hollow Nest, this incredibly striking setting that game takes place in. It's like a collapsed insect colony deep below the ground, and you just get deeper and deeper and uncover more mysteries and more biomes. And that game has a very specific atmosphere, and it's one that I felt here, but in a very different way, where Hollow Knight has an orchestral score and this hand-drawn, Tim Burton-esque gothic style. This one is pixel art, it's synthy, it's sci-fi, and so it manages to have a similar atmosphere to the Hollow Nest, but also to have an atmosphere all of its own, which I think is a big compliment to the game. As you're walking around, you'll see the remnants of this robot society. You'll see formerly useful robots just glitching out, malfunctioning illogically, like cleaning robots just going in circles. And also lots of robots that have just been infected by this virus and will attack you. There's combat in this game too. It's like a feeling of hive collapse, or I guess societal decline in some way. There's lots of trash everywhere. It's abandoned, and it's just deep. But there are signs of life here. You will find machines that are still working, conveyor belts that you can walk on, lifts that you can fix, doors that you can access. And information terminals. You'll occasionally see a blinking electronic light that shows that something is working, and often if you go over to it, you'll get a little line of lore, like a diary, just charting the things that came before and how this world turned out, how it did. The lore is pretty thin on the ground in this game. It's very, very minimal. And I think this is a rare case of a game when I would actually have liked a little more reading to do. I would like to know more. But you can piece together a rough story of what went down in this world. And there are a few characters too, even in this desolate, deep setting. You'll find a few conscious beings of various types. You'll find robots that are still carrying out their old tasks, sometimes pretty comedically, and they give little moments of levity in the game. You'll meet them dotted around this world on your travel. You'll have some recurring meetings. They're not quite as memorable as the crazy cool bugs that you meet in Hollow Knight. Like, I think his name is Quinn. It's been a while since I played it. But in Hollow Knight, there is this explorer that you'll meet who is on a grand tour of the Hollow Nest. And you'll just find him sometimes sitting on a bench overlooking a massive vista, and you'll have some philosophical comment or some poignant remark about how this is making him feel or what he's seeing. It's not quite there, but some of the characters are almost one-for-one modelled on those characters, so there is a nice feeling of familiarity in this game. For fans of Hollow Knight, it's quite a tribute. And the characters that are there, they do the job. It's nice to meet them. You'll find robots tinkering with scrap or setting up shop or trying to fix broken machines. And as I'm speaking about this game, I'm feeling like I'm describing it in a way that is perhaps more melancholy than my experience of playing it was. Like, as I'm speaking about it and passing out all my thoughts, it is a pretty melancholic setting, but that's not the feeling that I had playing it. I got like a familiar feeling playing it, a feeling of curiosity, a feeling of wonder, a feeling of wanting to know more, and just being excited to see what would lie around every corner and all the different areas of this world that I would get to find and experience. It was a feeling of being on a real adventure, seeing something special and secret, and I really admire that about this game. And it is definitely pretty much an on-the-record, Super Metroid-inspired and Hollow Knight-inspired game. It's very true to the formula that is laid out by those games, but it doesn't feel like a clone. And a lot of games that do this genre end up feeling like lesser versions of games that we know and love. This one doesn't. It really feels like its own thing, like it's earned its place at the table here. It has its own personality, it has its own style, and it doesn't hide those influences. They are they are writ large across the whole game, even down to some nice callbacks, little graphics that you might recognize, just little things here and there that are nice nods to the inspirations behind the game. So it's unashamedly hugely inspired by Hollow Knight, hugely inspired by Super Metroid, but in a way that very few Metroidvanias do. I think that this one really... It carries the torch for the genre, even if it is quite a small game, and if it's quite a discrete game that takes, 10 hours or 7 to 13 or whatever it was to complete. It's a small game, but it really does honour the roots of this genre, and it does it very well. And the gameplay is fun too. It's always fun. Like, it's always fun to move in this game. The character has a really nice jump. As you get more movement abilities, you really start to feel quite free in the environment, to be able to zip around quite quickly. It has combat, but it's pretty simple sword play. No ranged weapons, nothing fancy like ranged weapons. You're just striking, you're jumping, you're dodging. You only have one strike, not even a charge strike, I think. So it's super simple, but somehow manages to stay really interesting. I never got bored of the combat in this game. I was always engaging in it, even while looping around areas that I'd been to already, just trying to get through areas cleanly, trying not to get hit. It's just super fun to play. I think at the end of the game, when I was cleaning up the map, I started evading rather than fighting, but that was only right at the end. I was even after credits coming back to this game just to try and prize a few more secrets out of it. I'm at 97.5% complete on my save, so I'm just missing a couple secrets. I might end up looking them up just to polish that off, because it is quite a big world, and there are some like hidden walls that you have to hit that look a lot like normal walls, that kind of thing. But in Metroid, that was a bit of a problem sometimes, in that you couldn't find the way forward and there was only one way forward. In this game, you can always, or usually, identify the right way forward, and all of that gated stuff is optional, so it wasn't like a drawback at all. And when you kill enemies, they drop scrap, these little coins that bounce on the floor and make a really charming noise when you pick them up. I think it's called spare parts. That's the currency of the game. You can use it to shop if you find shops in little kiosks and little nooks and crannies of this world. You also use that currency to repair yourself. You can hold down one of the trigger buttons and you'll stand still, and Haiku will pull out a little spanner and start to repair themselves and start to pull their cogs. And you see that scrap starting to fly out from Haiku as he fixes himself. You see your currency going down. I like that there's only one currency. Keeps things simple. A lot of games have a little too many systems, seemingly just for the sake of it. This one has systems that are all in place to do what they do, and they do them well. You lose a percentage of your scrap if you die, and you respawn at the nearest save point. But each save point also has it's a really nice quality of life feature, this one. Each save point has a little tree thing that you can use a whistle at, and you can put your scrap into the bank, and then if you come to a shop later on, you'll have it available to you. So you can bank money. There's a bit of a risk reward in the early game because you need it to repair yourself, but you know that you're going to need it to buy things later. In the late game, it stops being so much of a concern because you just have so much cash and there's a diminishing amount of things to spend it on. So by the end, I was loaded, but in the early and mid game, I was definitely managing my currency. There are also a bunch of pickups that you'll find. You'll find items. The inventory reminds me of the old simple 2D Zelda games. For example, the old Zelda games, you would get like a power bracelet that lets you lift rocks, and just a couple of slots for important power-ups. Haiku, the robot, has that kind of system. So you'll find things that will give you advanced abilities that will allow you to travel to places that were inaccessible before, break floors, all of that kind of stuff that we're used to. So just a few slots for power-ups that are doled out gradually across the playtime. You might find key items like a rusted key, or story items like an old cassette tape, and you know that that's going to come in useful somewhere in this world. You also find power cells, and these are dotted around. They're hidden in plain sight sometimes. Like I found one by clinging onto a wall, planning to make my next jump, but Haiku started sliding down the wall and went way too far. And I thought I was going to fall into lava, but found a power cell just down there hovering right above the lava. So I found that one accidentally, and the power cells are optional. They do give you a nice payback if you find them all, a nice story payback. And those are dotted all around the world. I think there's like 15 or so of them. And I was worried that they were going to be too obscure to find, because there is a map in this game too. And maps obviously are all important in Metroidvanias. And this is a pretty good one. It starts out blacked out, so you can just see a flashing pin for your location. So you can see where you are in relation to the rest of that map, but it's all blacked out at the start. And you open up the map by finding map terminals, and for some reason you don't interface with them or anything like that. It's a fun little touch, actually, really. If you find a map terminal, you basically have to kick the shit out of it with your sword, hit it like 5 times, it will explode, and then you get the map, which is really funny. That's how you use the map terminal in this game. And a really fun thing about the map terminals is that they might be easy to miss. With an open-ended game of this type, you might walk past a door and just miss something that's of key importance, of paramount importance to your experience in the game. And I had a little bit of that problem, actually, with the fast travel system, which is like a metro network. And I think about towards the end of the game, I was looking at the network as I was trying to zip across the map and carry out my missions. And I was squinting at the map thinking, I wish there was a metro terminal like in this area that I need to get to all the time, or deep down into the world. Like it took me a long time to get down there, and not finding a train terminal and thinking, wow, those things are really scarce. But I realized in the late game that I had just walked past the odd door, because sometimes there are forking paths, you might walk past a door, and I'd missed 2 metro terminals, and so I'd been schlepping around the world. Maybe that's why my playtime is so big, because I wasn't using fast travel properly, because I just missed stuff. But there's a really nice solution to this when it comes to at least the map terminals, and that is that when you are in an area that a map terminal is in, it sends out a radar ping that is visible, so you'll know that you're in the same space as one, and you can apply yourself to tracking it down, even if it's in a hidden, closed-off space or something like that. So I really like that. I think it's a nice touch to make sure that you find them. It could have been like a needle in a haystack situation, but they solved it. There are a few other quality of life things, like being able to put your money in the bank is a really nice one. So there's definitely been some, play testing, and some thought has gone into the mechanics of the game to try and make it a more comfortable experience for you. I will say that the difficulty in this game is really manageable. I found it to be just perfect, really, perfectly nice. For an exploration game with combat, the exploration is the focus, and so keeping the combat nice and easy breezy, with no real big difficulty spikes, I think was a really good decision here. The game feels welcoming. It feels like it wants you to have a good time. It feels like it wants you to be mesmerized by this experience of exploring this world, and I really was. There's been a lot of chat on this podcast lately about difficulty, about games just over-egging the difficulty to the point at which I personally just become frustrated with them. They demand more from me than I'm willing to give. Tunic last week being a key example of that. I just bailed on that game completely. So it was a really nice change of pace to play Haiku the Robots and to feel like the creators of this game wanted me to enjoy it, and just to feel in sync with the intention, and to feel like its heart was in the right place. So yeah, the map actually becomes pretty essential. Once you've started feeling like you've explored most of the world, or at least most of what is open to you, until you get some extra movement mechanics in that Metroidvania style, you might find that you feel like you've been everywhere, and that's when the map really comes into its own. It uses that Hollow Knight system where if you study the map, you can find clues just by looking at it, and these come along in that if you see a gap in a wall, most of the areas have solid lines around the explored part. But if you see a hole, a place where the line breaks, that means that there's an opening there, or something that you've missed, or a door that you didn't take. So you really do have to start working with that map. You can zoom in on it, which is great, especially on the little switch screen. And you can also use the map to kind of surmise where a new area might be. For example, often in this game you will arrive at a door and you can see that on the other side of that door there is a switch to open it, but you have no idea how to get there. But then if you do that and you explore around that area, you kind of bear it in mind that somewhere to your east there is probably a way to get in and unlock that door. You can look at the map, and if you do that kind of deduction, you can figure out where the most likely place to get into that secret area is. And so I actually ended up really enjoying using that map. It did give me flashbacks to Hollow Knight in a really positive way. And there's not much specific info on the map at first. For example, characters don't have an icon at first, or points of interest. Like if you find a big cavernous room with a giant mysterious machine, you will know that that's going to be a significant location at some point. But that's not really marked on the map. You can see rooms that have a distinctive shape to them. You can spot them, use them to get your bearings. There are some scribbles in the map in little rooms. For example, if there is like a vault door, then you can see a circle that has been drawn onto the map, just like a little scribbled illustration. And I think at first it did take me a while to get my bearings within this game and to to start to know how the area is connected together. And I did get lost a fair few times. I was opening the map, going into a screen, opening the map, because some of these spaces that you come through, they're quite serpentine in their own way. You know, you might find a room that's like a Z shape connected to an X shape in terms of the corridors. And so if you're not exactly on point with exactly where you're going and you haven't memorized the route, you can take a wrong turn and end up having to backtrack quite a way, go back to the right door. Like maybe it was one level up to the west and you went in on the base level and you should have gone in on the second floor. So the environmental design can be a little confusing. There is, you know, I said it was small earlier, but there's quite a bit to this game. There's quite a lot of ground to cover, really. But by the late game, I really felt like I'd started to learn the environment just by schlepping around quite a lot. And I will say again that schlepping around is normally something that would go straight onto my shit list or my negative points if I'm reviewing a game. But something about this game, I actually enjoyed it. I just settled down and faded into that and started to just really enjoy walking around, listening to this music, looking at the wonderful pixel art, noticing things I hadn't seen before. And I think I really did take a very circuitous route around the world of Haiku the Robot in a way that I think speaks well to just the sheer enjoyment level that you can get from playing this game. So getting lost wasn't a big deal. Backtracking didn't feel like too much of a big deal. I didn't mind going around an area again. And without wishing to spoil anything, I mean, the map does get more advanced as you move through the game. There are little mechanics that will come along that will add to your map in a way that becomes really useful in the late game. I haven't spoken much about the story of this game because there really isn't that much story. You're basically trying to figure out what's going on, trying to track down the corruption, find out where it came from, the corruption that made this world fall. And you do that just by piecing together little things that people say, through exploring, through the little hologram apparition that will just pop out of nowhere and speak to you occasionally, almost curiously, like, what are you, little robot? Where have you come from, kind of thing. And there are bosses that you will fight too. I think the boss fights in this game are really good. They are pretty simple. They are not too hard. Bosses usually have 3 or 4 different types of attack. If you come into a boss room, there'll be a dramatic squall of synth noise, and the boss will kind of scream with this cool graphical effect. And then you'll be straight into it. There's a lot of dodging and striking, learning the patterns. And at first, the bosses wiped the floor with me, and I thought, oh god, this is going to be hard, isn't it? Like Hollow Knight again. I got a trauma flashback to the difficulty of Hollow Knight. But I quickly found that by the 3rd or 4th or 5th attempt at a boss, I had learned the patterns, and I could get through it without even being hit. So it's one of those games. You know, there were a lot of boss fights like that. I think about the game Ender Lilies, another post-Hollow Knight Metroidvania. The bosses in that one were all about learning the patterns, but it took a long time to do so. They were very... I think that game actually, Ender Lilies, required really good reactions. You had to react super fast. You had to preempt what was coming. This game is a lot more gentle, and all of the boss battles ended up being quite fun. I ended up looking forward to them rather than dreading them, and when I found a new boss, I was pleased because the battles were actually fun. And that's not something that I'll say often. Often, like, difficulty spikes or skill checks in games are points where I feel like I have to grit my teeth and soldier through. In Haiku the Robot, they were just so well pitched that I found them super enjoyable. So now I'm going to run through some of the good things and bad things about this game. First good one, lovely crisp pixel visuals, lovely animation, lovely crunchy pixel style. A really nice use of foreground and background to bring the world to life. I felt like I was learning a lot about this world just by looking at it rather than being told about it, which I really enjoy. I love it when a world can really speak to you visually and sonically and orally. It has a really nice, clean, intentionally retro visual style, a really nice faded look. It's all very distinctive. I found the music to be very fitting, very memorable, atmospheric synth music. It wasn't intrusive. And it was very much in tune with the kind of world that we were looking at, the kind of world we were experiencing, and the story that was being told. The sound also just really great Foley sound. They did a great job with it. It really made the space come to life. I really enjoyed the movement in this game. So this game's getting all the basics right, Like the jump is good, the dash is good, everything feels natural. Swinging the sword feels great, the wall jump is brilliant. I felt very mobile. It was just a pleasure to move around this world. The combat was simple, strike and dodge, one weapon. But I was okay with that in this case. Not every game needs a weapon wheel and a big skill tree and all of that kind of thing. And the chips that you get, they are useful. They're minimal, but they're useful. You did get a couple of chip slots when you begin the game. You access them at save points. And you find chips around. They'll do things like let you repair yourself more quickly, give you a wider sword arc, that kind of thing, give you a plus 10% chance of a critical hit, which will reduce the amount of strikes that you need to take down an enemy, that kind of thing. You learn pretty quickly that it takes 3 strikes to take down this type of enemy, 5 for that one. And the chips can help to maximize what you can do. It was a nice little addition, but it's a nice simple combat system. I think the boss fights were great, really simple, really fun, just a few tries to get past them, not over-egged in difficulty. I also think that this game is a good size. It's not too big. It's a big space to explore, but it never feels sprawling or never-ending. I think one of my only criticisms of the classic Hollow Knight is that sometimes it felt like they didn't know when to stop. It felt like there were more ideas than maybe there needed to be, and that there were areas of the game, especially in the late game, that were perhaps surplus to requirement. Some areas that could have been pared down and trimmed down just a little. As much as I love the Hollow Nest, and as much as I'm loath to critique Hollow Knight at all, I do think that world was perhaps a little too big sometimes, and Haiku is the opposite of that. It's a good size. It feels spacious, but it also feels like there was some restraint shown in designing it. I felt like I was going on an adventure through a really wild, forgotten place. I liked the way that their areas interlocked together, so there were various ways to get into each biome. You could come at it from, above, the left, or below. And so it was all tied together in an interesting way that allows the player to find their own way through this world and to feel like they are genuinely discovering it, to maybe go through an area they hadn't been through before, and then to arrive in a familiar place and to really feel like they were starting to master this place and starting to discover its secrets. And I will say that everything about this game feels like it was made with love. It's very carefully put together. It wears its influences on its sleeve, and it is an earnest love letter to Metroid and to Hollow Knight, but it really does those games proud. And in terms of the negatives, there are a few. The save points, which also act as restart points, they are pretty sparse. If you end up exploring for quite a while, or trying to get from A to B, doing a particularly long trek, and you die along the way, you're bumped right back to the last save point. There are no restart points. That includes boss rooms. I think that restart points would have been a nice quality of life inclusion, especially when you have to go through sort of 6 rooms with enemies and parkour before you get back to the boss. Those boss runs can be just a little frustrating at times. A few more save points wouldn't have gone astray. The fast travel points, pretty minimal as well, like the metro stops. I think there's only a handful of them in the game. I think it might have been a nice quality of life consideration to have more of them, but also to maybe mark them better. For example, in Hollow Knight, when you arrive at a bug tram station or whatever it was, there was always a lantern hanging outside of it, so you would know that was a special door. In Haiku the Robot, they look just like normal doors, and so it's very easy to walk past a room that you would really have valued having discovered. Maybe a little bit better of a visual signpost would have been good there. I would also say that a couple of quality of life things and a couple of the power-ups that you get that really open up the movement in this game. So to do with the map, I would say that the map detail, which is given to you as a reward sometimes, I would have liked that to be there from the start, honestly. It would have been great to be able to see what was in all of these rooms that I had been to, if there was a person there, if there was a point of interest there. But that comes to you very slowly. In terms of the power-ups, I think I got the all-important Metroidvania classic, the double jump, maybe 2/3 or 3/4 of the way through the game. I was gasping for the double jump by the time that I got it. I'd found so many places that I needed it for. You get the wall jump right at the beginning, but the double jump, I found it so late. I wonder if other people found it earlier and it was just my route through the game. I don't think it was. I think it was walled behind a boss that was walled behind a different movement mechanic. I would have liked to get the double jump earlier, I really would. I will also add that this is a very unguided game, and I actually enjoyed it in this case as I've described. There was something about the unguided nature of it that actually made it feel like more of an adventure to me. So I appreciated that about this game, but I can imagine that some folks might start to feel a little discouraged. If you were less in love with the look and sound and feel of this game than I was, I can imagine that some players might find themselves feeling a little lost. But that's not really a critique that I have, but I can see, in fact, that other people would think that. But all in all, there's a very solid progression system in the game. You do feel like you are growing. You do feel like your little character is growing in power as you progress. And whilst the story is very light and the progression is very light, I had a really lovely time with this one, actually. I was really, really transfixed by it throughout the whole playthrough. It brought up some of the same feelings that I had playing Hollow Knight. A little bit like an emotional flashback, really. I loved the overall feeling of this pixel world, this dripping, strange place, the retro look and the synth music. It's a real vibe. It's a real strong feeling and a really good little game. That's Haiku the Robot. So that was Haiku the Robot. Hope you enjoyed that review. Really good little game. It's on sale. Maybe if you're hearing this the day that the podcast comes out, it might still be on sale on Switch. If not, wishlist it. I think it's only £16 or something anyway, and I got it for $12. Really recommend this one. Fans of Metroidvanias, fans of retro video games, you're going to love this. You really are. If you have played this game, I'd love to hear about your thoughts on it. You can find me on Twitter at Gaming in the Wild. I'm also on all the other social media. You're also welcome to join the Patreon. That's at patreon.com/gaminginthewild. Actually, I want to give a little shout out to some reviews that I got. I was finding some reviews that I'd never seen before on a website called Chartable that pulls together all of the international Apple podcast reviews that people have left in different countries. And if you're in the podcast app, you only see reviews from the country that you are in. Turns out that there are loads of reviews from different countries in Europe and the States, and I hadn't seen before. And I found them all in one place, and it was very heartwarming. So thank you very much to anyone that has left a review of this podcast on Apple Podcasts. And thanks very much to anyone that's left a rating on Spotify. It all helps people find the show. I really appreciate that. I'll be back next week with another episode. I'm not quite sure what it will be about yet. I see on my schedule here that Scorn is coming out, that fleshy HR Giga-inspired horror game that's out today. I see a Plague Tale Requiem is coming out on Game Pass this week. That's exciting. Looking forward to that one. Also, I've got Rollerdrome, I've got Four Tales, I've got Rogue Legacy 2. Maybe it'll be one of those. Not quite sure yet. I'll see what takes my fancy this week. That's all from me for now. Take care of yourselves and each other. Thanks for listening, and bye-bye.